Are Pokemon Scarlet and Violet any good? Well, that's what I want to answer with this new series here that I'm starting on the channel, where I review every game that I beat on my playthrough on my channel, and kind of go and give my own opinion on what I think the games did good, what the games did bad, and what the games need to work on. I think the best way to do that is we start with all the cons, kind of start going with what needs improvement, and then we finish out with what the game did really well and what I personally enjoyed about each game I played. So I think to start off with Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, I think the first con I want to talk about is the probably biggest one that everyone has with this game, is the graphics. The graphics of this game, there's a lot of areas in this game where either you're glitching through the floor or there's not a lot of detail, and it doesn't bring a lot of life to what otherwise should be a lifeful experience with the game. So, I mean, there's a couple of big offenders in this game that I have a problem with that I think Game Freak and the Pokemon team should really focus on. I mean, the snowy area and the desert. The desert's the biggest. It's just a sheet of nothing with a couple mountains of nothing. So I think if they need to take a little bit more time with this part of the game and make it a little bit better to give the player a better experience. This kind of leads into the next point, where it's not necessarily the graphics fault, but more like they didn't put enough in it. And I think the next con is the cities are just forgettable. There's not an area in the game that is really breathtaking, that really reminds. I can't tell you one city that off memory that I enjoyed or is memorable to me. I think the only area that I remember from the game that comes straight to my mind is Area 0, and that's because it's a big plot point for the story. So I think if Game Freak and Pokemon are going to go into these open world games, I think the next thing they need to do is focus on making each spot somewhat memorable. Give it something that makes the player want to go back to that area, or not go back depending on how difficult and crazy it is. And I think the final thing, in my opinion, that this game doesn't do well, I guess in recent games hasn't done well, and I don't like it, is that the evil teams for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet is pretty lackluster. And I understand the story to it is a pretty heartfelt one, but if you think back in the olden games of Pokemon, like Generation 5 prior, those games, or Generation 6 prior even, those games had evil teams that really wanted to take over the world or do something that it was a lust for power. In a world with powerful creatures, yeah, you'd have people like that. And I think that's something that I think Pokemon needs to go back to, is making the evil team lust for some kind of evil desire that's not just, oh, I'm the bullies of the school, or I guess used to be bullies that became bullies. So I think the evil team is lackluster. Even though the story behind them makes sense for a school setting, but I wish there would have been some kind of overarching evil team that was trying to go for world domination again. I think Pokemon needs to get back to that. Now, we're going to move on to the needs work section. The first thing that I think is great that Pokemon added it, but I think for, I guess, a first to go around, it's really kind of the second go around, if you include Pokemon Legends Arceus, that the open world is great, but there's a lot of things that could be improved on. So I think the fact, and this kind of goes with like places that are forgettable, or there's no real reason to explore outside of getting from one area to the next, like going from one city to the next city. I think that that the open world idea is a great idea, and I think the fans have wanted that forever. But the problem is that there's really no incentive aside from shiny hunting and doing things like that, finding Pokemon in other areas, to go look in other areas. So I feel like there should be more story implements that lead you to more areas of the map that give you, one, better memory of that area, and two, just a reason to go to that area. And updating these graphics and doing all that will also help in that journey of making the open world a much better experience. The next thing I think that needs to be worked on and tweaked, because I did like the this individually, but when you put them together, it's kind of a mismatched pot. I think the story needs to be updated so that all the stories that when you put together are more cohesive. I think with Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, a lot of things that happened were that they had 3 solid mini stories, being your basic gym challenge, and then your go to beating the Titans, which I really enjoyed doing, and then to fighting the Team Star bases. Well, I don't think all 3 of those, and it kind of, you can tell that at the beginning they like want you to go one or the other. They don't want you to do all 3 at the beginning. They didn't really have a good way of putting them together. You kind of just grab strong people that you meet and then finish the story. So I think that if they were to fix that, I think we go and we put all 3 things together. We figure out a way to tie all 3 things together. Really focus in, like if you think about Generation 5, they really implemented the gym leaders. Really, you had the story and then you had the gym challenges. They really implemented the gym leaders well, and with the story of that games, and I think they can do that again. They just need more time to focus on it. And then and to my next point of things that need to be worked on, I think the gym leaders and the boss fights. Not necessarily that they were too easy or too hard. I think that was pretty good flow of things, except for the fact that I think that the boss fights in upcoming Pokemon games, and this one should have been, need to be scaled to your progression. So the problem with making it open world is you can do whatever you want. So you can go wherever you want. I could go to the last gym in the series, or the last gym in the sequence, and take it on right off the bat. But the problem is if I have level 1s, that gym leader is going to be really strong and I'm not going to be able to beat him. So I think that no matter what gym you go to or what boss fight you choose to do, that those challengers or trainers should be scaled to you. Like, I think Pokemon Origins, if you guys have seen that show, did a really good job of showing like, oh, you have 0 gym badges, well then I'll use these Pokemon. I think that could easily be implemented into any main series Pokemon game. There's a bunch of fan games that do that. So I think in the future, if we're going to do open world games with Pokemon, that the gym leaders and the boss fights need to be scaled to your level. That way it gets a challenge throughout the whole game, and I'm not going into an over-leveled area, or a lower-leveled area way over-leveled, or a under-leveled area way under-leveled. So now we move on to the pros. And with this game, I love Pokemon, and I think there's a lot of pros to this game. A lot of things that this game did correct. First one is I think they added a whole bunch of new Pokemon that are cool in design, or very useful, or unique. There's some, everyone has their opinions. There's some that you don't like. So in my opinion, some that don't really fit the bill for me, or like Mousehold is kind of weird to me. I really don't like Gimmighoul's Evolution Goldango. It looks kind of dumb. And then for the pseudo legendary, I think it's probably one of the most lackluster pseudo legendaries we've had. And that's my opinion. There are a few Pokemon, but most of this game, there's a lot of Pokemon that are really cool. If you think the Donzo, that's cool. The legendaries, a lot of cool legendaries were added. Miraidon, Koraidon, all the Goldfish one, I can't remember those guys' names, but the Leopard one, those are cool. The Bull, the legendaries were really solid. Couple honorable mentions. Some of my favorites that I used in my playthrough, if you guys watched it, are Annihilate and Kilowattrel. They really carried me through the game. Oh, and the dog himself, not actually a dog, but more like a pig, Lechonk and Oinkalone, or aka Stead in my series. They carried me through the game, and I love those Pokemon. Those Pokemon are great designs, and think they need to be appreciated more. So that's my opinion on those. Next pro of this game, I think these are some solid rivals that we got throughout the whole series. Not quite on the level of the original Blue, and then Silver was right underneath Blue. Those two were some of the best things in Pokemon that we've ever had. But I think these rivals gave me a solid challenge, because like, you gotta think your main rival, Ammonia, she, spoiler alert, is pretty much what the champion fight is. And then Arven, before taking on and going to do the final story, his boss battle, I lost to him twice before I finally beat him. So I think And then Penny isn't any pushover. She has all Eevees, and some of the Eevees are difficult to deal with, like Umbreon and Vaporeon. So I think collectively, all three rivals, none of them were really pushovers, and then some of them actually gave me pretty strong trouble throughout the game. Next pro. I think the gimmick to this game, this series of games, is really unique and very beneficial to, I think, the competitive scene, because it adds another layer that isn't too broken, but also makes your opponent have to think. So the terrestrializing and changing your Pokemon's Terra type really adds that layer of, hey, we're gonna make our Pokemon stronger. Barely, well, not barely, it's a significant increase, but make our Pokemon stronger, but also change its type depending on what type of Pokemon. It really makes a lot of Pokemon more useful because their typing is kind of bad. So when you get to change the typing to a more defensive style of play, it makes, one, your opponent have to think, and then two, it makes Pokemon that were essentially useless back in the day very much more useful because the fact that its weaknesses are now changed completely. So I think the terrestrializing was a great gimmick to add, and it wasn't broken as like Z moves were, or I think honestly Mega Evolution. Mega Evolution's cool, it's kind of broken. It made a lot of Pokemon a lot stronger. And then the final thing that I think that this game did really well and was really improved on since the last game, so the last generation, were the raids. I think the raids had some flaws in the last game, and I think this game solved a lot of it. I think that going turn by turn in the old games, the Sword and Shield, was very slow pace, and deterred a lot of people from doing it. I think everyone going at the same time was really beneficial to that, and I think that making it a way to get Pokemon that have different Terra types than their actual typing, and getting different Pokemon, the raids in general, just being able to catch Pokemon before you even, or being able to see what Pokemon you want before you even like throw the ball or go into the battle, which the last one did. It's just a good idea in general. So I think the raids were really fun, and it made it a beneficial way, which the last games did as well, but was a beneficial way to grit grinding. Didn't have to spend a lot of time grinding up on weaker, lower level Pokemon. You could just go into a raid battle, get a bunch of candy, and then level up your Pokemon as proceed. So, did I have fun with these games? Absolutely had fun with these games. These games were they the best? I don't think they were the best Pokemon has had to offer. I think that they were very much middle of the pack. But it is a Pokemon game, and if you enjoy Pokemon, you're going to enjoy these games. So, in my opinion, if you're a Pokemon fan, you should buy these games. If you haven't played them, play them. You'll get some kind of enjoyment, whether you are an old Gen 1er or a new person looking into getting into Pokemon for the first time. I think these games were fun. They had a lot to offer, and with the 3 different stories, there was something for everyone. So, if you guys agree, let me know. Let me know what you guys think of these games and how you played them, how you went through it, and what you experienced with it. So, with that being said, the next time we do something like this will be the next game I beat. And until then, peace.